On paper, buying a house should be getting easier. Since 2021, average earnings across England and Wales have risen by around 25%, while median house prices have risen by only 5%. And yet, for a lot of first-time buyers, it does not feel easier at all. In England, the median home still costs around £300,000. Median full-time earnings are about £39,300. The reason both things can be true is that a house does not really have one price. It has three: the price on Rightmove, the cash you need up front, and the monthly cost of borrowing the rest. To buy, all three have to work at the same time, and that is where the problem starts. Back in 1997, the average home in England and Wales cost roughly 3 to 4 times the average full-time salary. By 2025, the ratio in England was 7.6 times earnings. So yes, affordability has improved recently, but is improving from a much worse starting point. Over decades, house prices simply move much further ahead of wages. And the national average hides huge differences too. London is still far less affordable than places like the Northeast. For a first-time buyer though, all of this eventually turns into the same problem. You need a lot of cash before you can even ask the bank for the rest. Nationwide estimates that a 10% deposit on a typical UK first-time buyer home is around £23,000. Under its assumptions, that would take nearly 6 years to save. And that is before legal costs, moving costs, or anything else involved in buying. The difficult part is that many people are trying to build that deposit while also paying rent. So even if your salary might eventually support a mortgage payment, you still need to accumulate a large pile of cash before you can get one. And if house prices rise while you are saving, the target can move further away at the same time. But even reaching the deposit does not mean you can buy, because then comes the second price. Imagine a £250,000 home. You somehow save £25,000. You still need the bank to lend you £225,000. And that decision depends on your income, your existing spending and debts, and the lender's affordability checks. So the deposit gets you to the starting line. Your borrowing capacity decides how far you can actually go. That is why someone can earn what sounds like a decent salary, save for years, and still discover that homes around them require a mortgage they simply cannot qualify for. And even if the bank does lend enough, there is still one more problem. What does the mortgage actually cost every month? This is where the last few years changed things dramatically. At the end of 2021, the effective interest rate on newly drawn mortgages was around 1.6%. By June 2026, it was 4.35%. Take a £300,000 house with a 10% deposit, leaving a £270,000 mortgage over 30 years. At around 1.6%, the monthly repayment is roughly £940. At 4.35%, it's around £1,340. Same house, same deposit, around £400 more every month simply because borrowing money became more expensive. And that is why only looking at house prices can be misleading. A house can stay at £300,000 while becoming much more expensive to actually own. So, you might expect higher mortgage rates to solve the problem by forcing house prices sharply lower. But housing is not that simple. Britain has spent years adding homes relatively slowly compared with demand, and official reviews have repeatedly linked weak housing supply with affordability pressure. At the same time, most UK mortgages are fixed rate, so higher rates hit existing borrowers gradually rather than all at once. That makes the adjustment slower. Instead of prices simply collapsing until everyone can afford them again, you can end up with fewer transactions, stretched buyers, and house prices that remain high relative to earnings. Which brings us back to the strange position buyers are in now. By traditional measures, affordability has been getting better. Since 2021, wages have grown much faster than house prices, and mortgage rates have come down from their recent peaks. But a median English home still costs 7.6 times median earnings. A typical first-time buyer deposit still takes years to build, and borrowing remains much more expensive than it was in the ultra-low rate era. So affordability can improve without suddenly becoming affordable. The gap is simply not being closed quickly enough to undo decades of house prices pulling away from wages, followed by a sharp increase in mortgage costs. And all that gives you a better way to think about buying a house. Do not start with the asking price. Start with 3 questions. How much cash can you realistically build for a deposit? How much would a lender actually let you borrow? And what does the mortgage cost you each month at today's interest rate? Where those 3 numbers overlap is your real housing budget. Because the reason buying a house feels impossible is not that you have one affordability hurdle to clear. You have 3, and you need all of them to work at once.